Sometimes in Elder Quest worlds you end up in situations where what you see is not what is true. This is because how characters are treated might depend from person to person. Now the theory I'm about to talk about, character separation theory, really builds on trace theory, but it is distinctively different from trace theory. So having a good understanding of trace theory really helps to understand this theory. Among the fundamental things about Elder Quest worlds is that position of characters are displayed unequally between opponents and characters on screen. For example, right now you can see my character being at its correct position, which is the spawn location, while for the enemy my character moved and walked across the screen to where I was clicking before I entered the door. Now this is not a teleportation, and a character separation is distinctly different from a teleportation. Why that is because I actually have two separate characters that have different location. One is my location and one is the server's location. And for me to do an action, both of these characters have to line up. For example, if I try to hop, I am not able to hop before my characters are in the same location. Now the same thing goes for attacking someone. You will see that my character from my enemy's view are able and will reach my enemy quicker than I will, but I will still not be able to attack before both characters are in its base attack range. As you just saw. Now these two problems are not present when you are doing teleportations, and what triggers a character separation is a disconnection between what your location actually is and what the server thinks or traces your location to be. Now there are two different ways to separate your characters. One is by clicking way too much, like when you're going through a door, and the other way is through using your auto attack to charge towards an opponent while getting stuck. Sometimes forces the characters to separate, which is something I showed in my roof theory video. Now you can also combine both the auto attack, which I will refer to as 1, and clicking to make two types of character separations without doing hops. The first one is where I line up by the opponent and the opponent sees me walking towards where I clicked. The other one is where I walk away from the enemy and the enemy sees me moving towards. So the character separation that can happen within rooms or while hopping explains why you sometimes cannot hop between rooms. It also explains why you can stun glitch, because if you get stunned as you enter a room and you're clicking too much so your character separates, you're stuck in this place and this character can't go back, so when it tries to unstun you, your locations don't match up and you're stuck. And it also explains why you sometimes cannot attack. So a character separation is quite different from a teleportation. Now there is something I call a character split, which I am going to show you and then explain what I think is happening. So I'm going to trigger the character split. Now what you can see from what I've done is that I've actually not just separated the characters, I have been able to split them so that the location that I have and the server's locations don't have to match up. This glitch has a downside. It doesn't allow me to hop anymore. I am stuck behind in the room that I performed the character split in. But the cool part is that I now can manipulate where the opponent sees me and attack him from wherever I want on the map. And the other way around. So my hypothesis of why this is possible is very vague. I think it has something to do with server lag and it can't properly interpret and compare the positions. But I honestly have no idea. How did I do the character split? Now, you can obviously do these glitches without using macro keys, but using macro keys will make this a lot easier to test and to perform consistently. So I'm going to show you two macros that you can use to perform the two different character separations. The first one is a macro that allows you to separate your perceived character, so your current position, towards an enemy, while the position they see is forced where you click. Now the other macro does the opposite, so it makes it so you move away from the opponent and the opponent sees you going towards them. Now an interesting observation when using the macro or the separation that allows me to move away from my enemy is that obviously my location that the enemy sees cannot attack me. How I can attack is dependent on my position. So even though I am in a character splits state, I cannot attack through my perceived location. So to perform a character split, what you want to do is that you want to use the one click one macro, which is the macro that allows you to move towards the enemy while moving away. So what you want to do is that you want to stress the servers into allowing you to attack from this position, which is why we're using the one click one macro. Since you cannot attack from your perceived location, you can only attack from your actual location. What you're looking for is to make it flicker. So if I'm just pressing the macro and if I'm doing it too early, it won't happen. And you have to find that sweet spot. So there I just got it. As you saw, as I moved outside of the base attack range so that I couldn't hit the enemy and use the macro, I flicked back and forth and locked on to the enemy, and now I have performed a character split so I can attack him from wherever I want. As a last note for this video, I will say that there are more than two ways to perceive someone's location. Someone's location is not defined into your view and every other's view. You can have situations where someone sees you teleporting, someone sees that you're stuck at the door, and someone sees you move. So saying that you only have two perspectives is incorrect. I know that you can have 3 or 4 at least, and there probably are a lot more. Again, after watching this video, I hope you are able to understand more of the fundamentals and dynamics and physics of Adventure Quest Worlds PvP. And I really hope that someone is able to find a good explanation for why a character split is possible. And I really hope that people build on this theory and give it a full explanation besides my hypothesis, since I really think the applications of this theory is quite cool while it seems quite restrictive.